What you want to say about the baby?
Good time, baby.
Book bag? Book bag.
Hey.
It's July 4th in Aiken County, South Carolina. A sheriff steps up to a podium. He's been in law enforcement for 36 years, and he says this is the hardest announcement he's ever had to make. For 4 days this community searched, more than 200 first responders, a helicopter, drones, search dogs, thousands of acres of wooded land, ponds and creek beds covered inch by inch in triple-digit heat, all of it for one 4-year-old girl. Her name was Javeayah Harris. And in this moment, standing in front of cameras and grieving neighbors, Sheriff Marty Sawyer says something that changes everything. He says the searchers were already too late, not because they were too slow, not because they missed her by minutes or hours or even days. He says the moment that 911 call came in, reporting Javeayah missing, she had already been gone for a month.
Aiken County 911, where's your emergency?
Ma'am, I'm at 39 Hillsborough Street. I can't find my baby. She was outside playing, and I came out here after cooking dinner a little bit, and I'm looking for her, but I don't see her nowhere.
Read that again, a month. Which means every flyer posted on a telephone pole, every prayer said at a community vigil, every volunteer who wanted to help but was turned away by police, all of it happened after the story had already ended. The search the public believed was racing against time was never going to find a living child, because according to investigators, the child had not disappeared at all. She had died weeks earlier, inside a story her own parents told the world. So who was lying? And why would 2 parents spend 4 days watching strangers search the woods for a daughter they already knew wouldn't be found? That question, not where is she but why did they let us look, is what turns this from a missing child case into something far darker. And to understand how a community ends up searching for a child who was never lost, you have to go back before the 911 call, back to who Javeayah actually was. Before we go further, if this kind of carefully researched true crime storytelling is what you're here for, take a second to subscribe. It helps this channel keep digging into cases like this one the right way. Javeayah Harris was 4 years old. She lived in a home near Hillsborough Street and Ridgecrest Road, in a quiet stretch of Aiken County, South Carolina. The Aiken County Sheriff's Office would later describe her in 3 words: smart, talkative, friendly, not generic words, the kind of description that comes from people who'd actually met her. Her mother, Mitchell Herring, said much the same thing, in a moment nobody was supposed to hear played back later. On a 911 call, the same call that would eventually unravel, Herring described her daughter as very smart, said she could carry a full conversation. It's a small detail, but it's one of the only times in this entire case that we hear a parent describe who Javeayah actually was in her own words. Neighbors remembered her too. One woman, identified only as Ms. Young, said Javeayah wasn't the kind of child who wandered. She wouldn't even cross the street on her own. She liked to hold hands, even walking to the refrigerator, she wanted someone's hand in hers. That detail matters more than it seems, because it directly contradicts the story that was about to be told to police. Ms. Young said something else too. She said other people in the neighborhood had at times fed Javeayah, bathed her, given her clean clothes and sent her back home. She wasn't the only one who noticed. It wasn't official. Nobody filed a report that we know of, but something about that little girl's situation had already caught the attention of the people around her, long before anyone called 911. We should be careful here. This is one neighbor's account, not a confirmed record of abuse or neglect, but it's the kind of detail that, looking back, becomes very hard to ignore. Javeayah was last seen, according to her mother, wearing pink Minnie Mouse pajamas, with pink beads woven into her braids. She was about 3.5 feet tall, 42 pounds. A photo of her in bright pink would later circulate across the entire community, the same pink that mourners would wear when they gathered to remember her. She was, by every account available to us, a normal 4-year-old girl, smart, chatty, cared for in some ways by more than just her own parents. Which makes what happened next even harder to reconcile, because for the world outside that house, Javeayah's story didn't start with any of this. It started with a phone call at nearly 9 at night, from a mother who said her daughter had vanished. According to the account given to police, the evening of Tuesday, June 30th began ordinarily enough. Javeayah was outside, near the family's chicken coop, playing something investigators say she did often. Her mother, Mitchell Herring, was pregnant, very pregnant, 39 weeks by her own account on the 911 call. She told dispatchers she'd been cooking dinner, and when she came back outside to check on her daughter, Javeayah was gone. Herring called 911 just before 9 p.m. on the recording later released publicly. You can hear her giving dispatchers details, the spelling of her daughter's name, a description of what she was wearing. She mentions, when asked about health issues, that Javeayah might have autism, though she says no formal diagnosis had ever been made. She says she can't keep up with her daughter the way she normally would, being so far along in her pregnancy. Meanwhile, Javeayah's father, Javeayah Harris, wasn't home. He would later tell a reporter he'd been out doing laundry, stopping by a convenience store. He said he first realized something was wrong when he started seeing an unusual number of patrol cars in the area. His girlfriend's phone had no service, he said, so she couldn't reach him. He assumed at first that she might be going into labor. Instead, he came home to a small army of law enforcement outside his house, and a drone already in the air. From there the case moved fast. Deputies searched around the property. The story spread, and what began as a call about a wandering child became, almost overnight, one of the largest search operations Aiken County had seen in years. Multiple agencies, including the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI, combing more than 3,000 acres within the first 2 days, a number that would grow past 5,000 by the weekend. On the surface, this was every parent's nightmare playing out in real time, a community mobilizing. Search grids mapped out in color-coded zones, a helicopter identified by its tail number, sweeping wider areas near the highway. But even in these earliest hours, there were threads that didn't quite hold together, starting with the very thing a neighbor had said about Javeayah, that she didn't wander, that she held hands crossing a room, let alone a yard. Nobody knew yet how significant that detail would become. For now, all anyone knew was that a 4-year-old girl was missing. And the clock, as far as the public understood it, was already running. It wouldn't be long before investigators started to see the story very differently than the community searching those woods. By Wednesday, July 1st, the search had grown into something enormous. Helicopters, K9 units, drone teams, more than 3,000 acres searched, then closing in on 5,000, roads blocked, drivers stopped and questioned, all of it under a summer heat wave pushing the heat index near, and at times above 100 degrees, a detail investigators would later cite as part of what made every hour feel more urgent. Javeayah's father spoke to reporters during this stretch, visibly shaken, saying not knowing was killing him. He described giving detectives information about people he said had been snooping around the house in the period before Javeayah vanished, a claim that, as far as public records show, was never confirmed or built upon in later reporting. Behind the scenes, though, something else was happening. On Friday, July 3rd, the sheriff's office put out an update saying the search would intensify and expand. Buried in that same statement was a single line that, in hindsight, was the clearest signal yet that something had shifted. Investigators said they'd conducted numerous interviews, including with Javeayah's own family. At the time, almost nobody noticed that detail. It read like routine procedure. It wasn't. That same day, visible search efforts were scaled back, a decision that, to the public, looked like simple resource management after days of fruitless searching in brutal heat. It would turn out to mean something else entirely. Because investigators, by this point, were no longer looking for a missing child, they were building a criminal case. The following morning, Saturday, July 4th, Sheriff Sawyer called the press conference that changed the entire narrative. He announced that the evidence now led investigators to believe Javeayah was deceased, and then came the detail that stopped the search cold. He said the investigation supported that she had been dead for at least 1 month before that 911 call was ever made. 1 month, while her mother described a girl who liked to carry conversations, who wandered near a chicken coop under her mother's watch, Javeayah, according to investigators, had already been gone for weeks. The math forces an uncomfortable question. If she'd been gone that long, then the phone call that launched a 5,000-acre search, that pulled in the FBI, that had 200 people combing woods in 100-degree heat, that call wasn't reporting a disappearance at all. It was concealing one that had already happened. and the physical search itself started to shift in ways that made this clear. Law enforcement began focusing not on the area around the family's home in Aiken, but roughly 2 hours north near Debutry Creek, close to an area locally known as Stumpy Pond in Fairfield County. Boats, dive teams, the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources, the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, lled. All moving into a stretch of water investigators would only describe, cryptically, as an area of interest. Officials never fully explained, publicly, what led them there, but the location itself told its own story. It was near where Javeayah's parents were originally from, hours from the home where she was reported missing. Family members showed up at that scene too, in tears, looking for any scrap of information law enforcement would give them. For a family that had already been through days of searching in Aiken, this was a second wave of the same nightmare, just in a different county. And there's something worth sitting with here. Throughout that first week, the sheriff's office had repeatedly said it was not accepting outside volunteers, that this was a job for trained search and rescue personnel, working a methodical sector-by-sector grid. At the time, that read as caution, standard procedure for a large-scale search. Looking back, though, it takes on a different weight. Investigators may have already been working 2 separate tracks at once. A public search effort in Aiken, and a quieter, evidence-driven pursuit of a very different answer entirely. The case had changed. It was no longer a search and rescue operation. It was a search for a body, and for the truth about what 2 parents had allegedly done, and then tried to hide. If you're following along this closely, you're exactly the kind of viewer this channel is made for. Hit subscribe now so the next update in this story lands right in front of you. The arrests came within hours of that July 4th press conference. Javeayah Harris, 23, and Mitchell Herring, 22, Javeayah's father and mother, were both taken into custody and charged with homicide by child abuse. Herring was charged with a second offense, filing a false police report. The homicide charge alone carries a sentence of 20 years to life, the false report charge up to 5 years, or a $5,000 fine. But it was the arrest warrants, obtained by news outlets the following Monday, that revealed just how far this had gone beyond a missing child story. According to those documents, both parents showed what investigators called extreme indifference to human life. The warrants stated that Javeayah suffered an injury during an alleged physical assault by her mother, and that neither parent sought medical care for that injury. Investigators say that assault took place sometime between May 1st and June 15th, a full window of weeks before anyone called 911. And then, the detail that closed the loop entirely, according to reporting on those warrants, both parents confessed. Confessed not to a disappearance, to her death, and investigators allege, to concealing it for weeks while the public searched. Bond hearings followed on Sunday, July 5th. Neither parent had an attorney present. Herring told the magistrate she worked for a company called Transcom, paid every 2 weeks. The judge determined her income was too high to qualify for a court-appointed lawyer. Because a magistrate court doesn't have jurisdiction to set bond on a homicide charge, both cases were sent up to circuit court. Both parents were held without bond. One more detail surfaced that weekend, one that investigators have been careful and correct not to connect to anything. Herring had given birth to another child just days earlier, on July 1st, in the middle of the search for Javeayah. That newborn was placed in the custody of a family member. Law enforcement has explicitly said there is no evidence tying the timing of that birth, or the pregnancy itself, to the false report. It's a detail that belongs in this story only because it happened, not because it explains anything. That Sunday evening, as the community searched for its own way to process what had happened, mourners gathered at a small gathering spot in downtown Aiken called the Alley. Many wore bright pink, the same color Javeayah had been photographed in weeks earlier, when the public still believed she might be found alive. A makeshift memorial began forming at the family's mailbox on Hillsborough Street. Teddy bears, Disney balloons, candles, flowers. The community had shown up to search for a living child. Now it was showing up to grieve one.
They should get the stuff from here and bring it to her grave.
This should be balloons that should be for her birthday party.
She was a pretty girl. She not deserve that.
I can actually walk to where they live at, and I have not gotten no rest, I can't really think.
We were hoping for a better outcome, but as he also stated, we got to except for what it is. But it's not good. It's very heavy. But we just got to keep praying.
Seeing the house and where she lived, it really puts you in it. You can feel the sadness when you come out. But seeing all of the support, all the gifts, all the Minnie Mouses, all the balloons, it really shows you the support and love that people have for her in the community and in the communities outside.
They come to my house and wake me up out my sleep, but it is kind of crazy, I ain't gonna lie, because I don't know, they really right up the street and there's nowhere to be found. Like, she's nowhere to be found.
Yeah, we've been out here for 4 years now. We know pretty much most of the people in this neighborhood, their kids, the whole thing. And for the girl to live literally right around the corner, we're out here all the time. Like, every day somebody's out here. And we would have noticed the little girl walk.
I have a daughter. I've lost a daughter. Like, it hit me in a place that I didn't even know I had. I didn't. Because I love her and I don't even know her. I'm sure there's plenty of people here that's been here or going to come here that are here right now that love her and don't even know her.
At Javeayah Harris's own bond hearing that Sunday afternoon, the magistrate asked a routine question: who else lived in his household? Harris answered simply his girlfriend, and then quieter he added one more word: his child. It's a small, human moment buried inside a court proceeding, and it's one of the only times in this entire case where a suspect's own words in his own voice acknowledge Javeayah directly, in the present tense, even after everything investigators now allege he confessed to. Both parents were photographed during their hearings. Harris appeared in what's sometimes called a turtle suit, a tear-resistant garment used in some jails for a range of safety reasons. Its use on its own tells us nothing about guilt or state of mind. It's simply part of the record. But even with 2 confessions on the record, the case was still missing its most basic answer, the one thing that had driven the entire search in the first place. Where was she? That question was finally, partially, answered on Thursday, July 9th. Sheriff Sawyer held another press conference, his most difficult yet, by his own description. He announced that investigators had recovered some of Javeayah's remains from Cedar Creek Reservoir, the body of water in Fairfield County, known locally as Stumpy Pond. DNA testing confirmed what everyone feared. The remains were consistent with being the biological child of both Javeayah Harris and Mitchell Herring. Javeayah's death was now confirmed, not just believed, confirmed. Sawyer described what investigators had found as deeply disturbing, saying the evidence pointed to extensive and deliberate efforts to destroy and conceal her remains after her death. He said, in nearly 4 decades in law enforcement, he had never encountered anything this horrific. Both parents now face an additional charge: destruction and desecration of human remains. He also made a decision, in that same press conference, not to refer to Harris and Herring as parents at all. He said they hadn't earned that title.
I will not refer to them as mom and dad or mother or father. They don't deserve that title.
As of today, here's what the public record actually shows, and what it still doesn't. We know the charges: homicide by child abuse, filing a false police report, and destruction and desecration of human remains. We know both parents allegedly confessed, according to arrest warrants. We know investigators believe Javeayah died at least a month before she was reported missing. What we don't know is arguably more significant. No cause of death has been released. Investigators haven't said whether a weapon was involved, or whether her death resulted from the alleged assault directly, from a lack of medical care afterward, or some combination the public hasn't been told. No motive has been offered, not by the sheriff, not in any warrant made public so far. We don't know whether anyone reported concerns about Javeayah's welfare before this happened, or whether child welfare agencies had any prior contact with this family. The neighbor's account of Javeayah being fed and cared for by others nearby raises the question, but it doesn't answer it. Legally, the case is still in its early stages. Herring's first scheduled court appearance is in September. As of the most recent reporting, neither parent has a confirmed attorney. Prosecutors haven't said whether additional charges are coming. Meanwhile, the search hasn't fully ended either. Investigators have continued returning to both the family home and the area around Stumpy Pond, working to recover the remainder of Javeayah's remains. And the community hasn't stopped showing up. A second vigil was held in Aiken County, where mourners were asked to bring a teddy bear, a small, physical way of giving back some of the comfort Javeayah never got the chance to have. One local business owner, who'd spent the search days delivering free meals to searchers, said he learned Javeayah had died the same afternoon he was still out delivering food. That's the timeline this community lived through, help arriving right up until the moment hope ran out. 1 week after Javeayah was first reported missing, the church that had served as the command post for searchers throughout that stretch, Bethel Baptist, gathered again. Not to organize search teams this time, just to sit with what the week had become. It's a small detail, but it says something about how deeply this case reached into daily life here. A building that had been full of maps, radios, and volunteers a week earlier was now simply a place for a community to be together in its grief.
Child to experience the love that she was not able to experience while she was on this earth. And as you can see, she's getting it.
So please speak up. If you can help, please let people know that you are available for help.
I don't even know the baby, but I wish they could have gave her to me. I love kids. And harming a child, it's terrible.
And there is still real work being done, out of public view, to close the remaining gaps. Only some of Javeayah's remains have been recovered so far, which means investigators, forensic teams, and dive crews are still returning to Cedar Creek Reservoir, still working the same water that first became an area of interest days earlier. Every piece they recover is both an answer, and in its own way, a fresh reminder of what was done. The case is open, the grief is not waiting for it to close. Javeayah Harris was 4 years old. She liked to talk, she liked to be held by the hand. She wore pink and Minnie Mouse pajamas and braids with beads woven through them. For 4 days, strangers who never met her searched thousands of acres in brutal heat, because they believed she might still be out there, waiting to be found. She deserved so much more than what the record now shows she was given. This case is still active. Charges are allegations until proven in a court of law, and there is still real uncertainty about exactly how and why this happened. We've told you only what has been confirmed by investigators, court documents, and named sources, and where the record runs out, we've told you that too. If you want to talk about this case in the comments, we ask that you do it with care. This was a real child, and this is still an active investigation. 2 questions if you're willing to sit with them. Do you think the community could have known something was wrong sooner? And if so, what would it have taken for someone to act on it? And how do we, as a society, close the gap between neighbors who notice something's off and a system that only responds once it's too late? If you found this breakdown thorough and respectful, consider subscribing. We dig deep into the verified facts of cases like this one. No speculation dressed up as fact, no sensationalism. Just the truth, laid out as carefully as we can find it. Rest easy, Javeayah.